And we are off. We're back. Dolphins are back from their bye of 2025. And Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel is back to join me to discuss a lot to discuss actually at Dolphin headquarters on this Monday, November 24th, 6 days before they resume action against the New Orleans Saints at Hard Rock Stadium. A game, as Perk and I were discussing, watching the Dolphins practice, it's really not a gimme, but and I know there's certain Dolphin fans, they suck. There's no game that's a gimme, but that's pretty close to a gimme, right, Perk?
This better be as close to a gimme as they get. The Jets, you're on the road. Pittsburgh is Monday night, and so this is it. This is as close to guaranteed victory night as we or day that we're going to get for the 2025 Dolphins.
Yeah, and I did a story on Miami Dolphins on SI.com where you check out the free content, a lot of it, all the time, every day, 24/7, 365. Before the season started, ranking the Dolphins' 17 games on their schedule by degree of difficulty, and I had this game at home against New Orleans as the easiest. That was before the season started, and now Alvin Kamara is injured. They traded away Rashid Shaheed, who's a really fast wide receiver. They waived Brandon Cooks over the weekend, and their once vaunted, or as vaunted as it could be, trio of wide receiver, the other one being Chris Olave. He remains, and he's a good player, but now they have Tyler Shuck at quarterback, their second-round pick from Louisville, who's, how old is he? 37 years old. Oh, sorry, like 25. Sorry, something. It's a very nondescript team. They're 2-9. As you mentioned, if the Dolphins don't win this game, we can forget about any sort of playoff talk.
That's right. I agree. And look, this is a game for the Dolphins to finally flex on somebody. Well, I say finally, they flexed on Buffalo. They kicked Buffalo's butt. But you're expected to win this game. You're expected to probably, I don't know what the line is, but you're probably expected to win this game by almost a touchdown. Live up to the expectations, deliver what's expected to be delivered, play a clean game, stay injury free, which I know they have no control over that. But, this is one of those games where you need to get everything in order for the stretch run. You're coming off the bye. You've won back-to-back games. You've won 3 out of 4. You have a chance to get to 500. All of this stuff is lining up for you in a great way. Who knows if Baker Mayfield is going to be there for Tampa when you play them in the second to last game of the year. Who knows if Joe Burrow is going to be there when you play them, although he's supposed to play on Thanksgiving night. Right. Everything is lining up on this Monday, as it November 24th. Everything is lining up perfectly for the Dolphins down the stretch. I'm not saying that the Dolphins are going to go 6-0, but things are looking favorable for them to have a very strong finish. Don't trip on the New Orleans Saints. Do what you're expected to do.
Correct. And not only that, though, to me, I'm not sure I'd feel good even if they just squeak by. It's like, I'm sorry, like the Washington win was nice and all that because it gave you a 2-game winning streak headed into the bye, but it wasn't particularly impressive. They easily could have lost and maybe should have lost that game. It needs to be a dominant performance against New Orleans. Along the way, the Dolphins, regardless of how this shakes out, are going to need some help because they're 11th in the AFC standings. Yeah. That's 4 teams they have to jump over. Didn't get a whole lot of help this weekend. The only one that really helped was the Steelers losing against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. Indy beating KC would have helped because Indy, you figure, are going to be tough to catch because they're 8-3 now still. KC would enter the game at 5-5. Again, this is a game Indy was up 20-9, but it's like you got to stab them. The Chiefs, you got to stab them 738 times before you finally get rid of them. They came back, give them credit. They played really good defense on the stretch. 4 straight 3-and-outs at the end of the game for Indy. And then Arizona could have helped out the Dolphins and then decided to, in overtime, needing a field goal to tie or a touchdown to win. The wide receiver, after catching like a 30-yard pass, said, it'd be a good idea with the clock running. Let me spin the football, showboat, because my catch is more important than everything else. And then the Cardinals let 15 seconds off the clock before they snapped the ball when they could have just spiked it immediately, taken 2 shots at the end zone instead of 1. And then finally the last straw, 4th and 4, needing a first down, throw a ball deep into double coverage. Good choice. Good choice. Shockingly enough, the pass was incomplete. Arizona lost the game. Okay. And for the record, for those who think the Dolphins absolutely have to run the table to have a shot at making the playoffs, that would put them at 10-7. If they go 5-1, that would put them at 9-8. Yes, teams have made the playoffs at 9-8, including your very own Miami Dolphins in 2022, the year Skylar Thompson was a quarterback when the Dolphins clinched that playoff berth with a scintillating, heart-pounding, thrilling shootout, 11-6 against the Jets. Sorry, it was none of the above, but it was a win to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they came through down the stretch, and that's what you wanted to see from that particular team with that losing streak that they had going. That was a must-win game, and they won it. You know, one of the things that I'm encouraged about with this team, Poop, is that you could be getting Darren Waller and Austin Jackson back in the next couple of games, and that's really going to help you down the stretch. We talked to Darrell Bevell, the quarterbacks coach, today about Tua's season, and he said it's been up and down. And look, Tua has been without Tyreek Hill for a lot of the year, without Darren Waller for a good part of the year, without the right side of his offensive line for a good part of the year. So you would expect it's going to be an up and down season. But man, if you can get some guys back and the way that the offensive line has been playing, the way Achane has been playing, your defense has started to show signs of making plays on a more consistent 172, and Mariota just had the 44-yard carry within that 172. Screw all that. The Dolphins won. The run defense is showing signs of putting things together. So it's it's a good finish, and things are setting up well for the Dolphins down the stretch. So you just want to see them take care of business. No stumbles, just do what you're expected to do when you're expected to win, shock the world once or twice when you're expected to lose, and see how everything shakes out. But look, you've got to give them a much better chance right now of having a respectable season than you did at 1-6, right? When it looked like everybody's getting fired. Yeah. You have a chance to have a respectable season now. Finish the job.
Absolutely. And as context, Perk talked about Darrell Bevell's comments. Thursday is normally the day where we get the 3 coordinators, Craig Aukerman, Anthony Weaver, Frank Smith, along with 2 assistant coaches. Because Thursday is Thanksgiving, there will be no media availability in Dolphin camp. They moved those interviews to Monday. And full disclosure, during those media sessions, I asked Darrell Bevell and prefaced the question by saying, feel free to tell me I'm wrong, but to my untrained eye, it looks to me like Tua has made more throws this offseason with his feet not properly set. Now, outside of those plays where he has pressure and he has no choice, and Darrell Bevell basically said, you're wrong. So there you go. That's still my perception. Maybe I'm wrong. The follow-up to the question was what would you attribute that to? And he basically kind of, again, he dismissed the idea, or he said he disagreed with the idea as politely as he could.
I think you're right, but who am I to, disagree with Darrell Bevell? He spent his whole life in football, so if that's what he says, sure, then I'll go with Darrell Bevell. But, I wish that I would have pursued the question from the standpoint of the footwork, because that's something that Darrell Bevell talks about all the time. You hear Mike McDaniel refer to it, and I talked to Snoop Huntley and Tim Boyle about it. Just the footwork is so different with the Dolphins quarterbacks, and it is such an important part of being a Dolphins quarterback. That and getting the ball out quickly. That's what Snoop Huntley and Tim Boyle told me was one of the things, or 2 of the things, that are so different about playing in this system. It's not all the motion and all your pre-snap activity. It's the footwork and the quarterback coach standing behind you in practice going, get the ball out, get the ball out, get the ball out. The footwork thing really fascinates me because I've never really delved into it or gotten specific with it. But that was an excellent question by you. And yeah, and I'm glad that Bevel did allow that. Yes, Tua has had an up and down season. He didn't try to BS us and, oh, Tua's been fine, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, and make a bunch of excuses. It gives me more confidence in Bevel's analysis of Tua every time that I ask him, knowing that he will give us a pretty straightforward answer and an honest answer. So good question, good answer. I wish I would have pursued it more, but I agree with you. With my untrained eye, it just looks like Tua has not been as accurate or delivering the ball with as much confidence this season in those situations, right, where there's no pressure. But, I'll go with Daryl Bevel.
Over me? Really?
Well, I didn't say over you, Poof. I just said I'll go with Daryl Bevel. Well,
Okay.
it's separate statements. I trust you. I'll go with Daryl Bevel.
Okay.
Separate statements. They have nothing to do with each other.
Sure, we'll go with that. I kid. I'd go with him too. If there was any news today out of any of the media sessions, Mike McDaniel also spoke to us before practice. The coordinators and the assistant coaches were after practice. And to me, again, if there was any major news to come out of Monday, it regards James Daniels, who basically, from the tone of it, ain't coming back in 2025. And check out the story I wrote on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. And there are a lot of questions that need to be asked about this whole thing, starting with Mike McDaniel saying at the time they put James Daniels on the IR, which was the Wednesday after week 1, that there was a tough decision to do because it was 4 weeks-ish in terms of his recovery time. He was asked whether there was a setback. Well, I don't say or don't. I'm not gonna say don't know, something along those lines. And then you were dealing with the fact that Darren Waller is going to have his practice window open on Wednesday, coming back from a pec injury. Now, obviously, not all pec injuries are different, but usually you have the torn pec, which is a very severe one. You're done for the year. And based on what McDaniel said in September, that's not what James Daniels had. Now, after that, you could have strains of varying degrees. Mm-hmm. But again, we go back to what McDaniel said in September. James Daniels also had a pec injury in October of 2020. He did not come back. Mm-hmm. So a whole lot of questions there. I threw out a hypothesis on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Check it out. That's my tease. How's that?
There you go. That's good. That's good.
Go ahead. Go check it out. What do you make of this whole thing?
I don't know if Mike McDaniel was being coy with us at the start. I don't know if the injury was misdiagnosed. I don't know if there was a setback. But as you say, all pec injuries aren't created equal. You remember Aaron Brewer had one, and he played through it.
He never missed time.
Never missed time. Darren Waller has missed a few weeks, and James Daniels is not going to come back, it looks like. So that's your evidence that all pec injuries are not created equal. But I don't know what the deal is with the James Daniels one, because you're right. Mike McDaniel, when it happened, it didn't sound like it was that serious. If you're wondering if I should put the guy on IR because he might not need to miss 4 weeks, to now it's been 10 weeks, right? Well, maybe 11 weeks.
11 weeks.
Yeah. That's a big difference without a setback. So I don't know, again, if he was just being coy for competitive reasons early, or if there was a misdiagnosis or a setback or what, but it doesn't add up. Something has changed since the first time Mike McDaniel told us about James Daniels and talked about this injury. And
I forgot that one more thing Mike McDaniel said. He basically said, I don't know whether he's coming back or not.
Yep.
So read the tea leaves, probably not happening. Now, what's going to happen next year? James Daniels, remember, signed a 3-year contract. He's got zero guaranteed money beyond 2025. What's left for the Dolphins? They will be responsible for the prorated portion of his signing bonus, which is $1.2 million a year, but they added 2 void years on top of the 3 years, which means they have $4.8 million left. That would be the cap hit if they make him a regular cut next offseason, which is not an egregious amount. They could always do the post June 1, then his cap number goes down to 1.2. I don't know that you would even bother using a post June 1 for that if that's the direction he would go. The guy can play, but now he's played 3 snaps for the Dolphins all season. He played 4 games last year for the Steelers because of the Achilles injury, and then a 2020 pec injury where he played 5 games. So it's one of those where he's a good player. Can you really rely on him now?
Yeah, and you have an injury situation to deal with Austin Jackson also. So the right side of that offensive line, well, you looked to secure it this year. You're going to go into it kind of shaky next year. Even if Daniels and Austin Jackson come back because of the time that they've missed each of them the last 2 years, you don't know if you can count on either of them next season. So you're almost in the same situation that you were in last offseason, that with the unsettled right side of the offensive line. And so we'll see how they choose to handle it. But
funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
Funny you should mention the right side of the offensive line, because that also was a topic of conversation today. So,
it was.
And Mike McDaniel, because he couldn't help himself, said, we've gotten some really good play out of the right guard position, even if it might sound strange to you guys, but don't see Cole Strange.
Yeah.
That was in response to my question, which is a question I've gotten a lot from fans, is what happens when Austin Jackson returns? Could Larry Borom be moved to right guard? Because I think most of us would probably say, based on what we've observed, Larry Borom has been more effective at right tackle than Cole Strange has been at right guard. Larry Borom has guard experience on his NFL resume. And that's exactly how I answered it in a mailbag that you could have read on MiamiDolphinsOnSide.com for free. The Dolphins tend to operate, why make changes at 2 spots? If you can limit it to 1 spot, that's number 1. And number 2, the Dolphins tend to perhaps see the performance of their own players differently than us in the media see them.
Yep.
So basically, the answer was no, but Mike McDaniel did say Austin Jackson, upon his return, might not play a full game. What'd you make of that?
Which I thought that was kind of interesting, right? I mean, it's not like you rotate offensive tackles, it's so, bringing him back if he's not ready to play a full game. I don't have a problem with it, because it's something that probably any one of us would go, just let him play 40 plays. Who cares? You don't see that in the NFL. The offensive line, right? They stay together. They stay on the field. And so that's kind of an odd answer and a kind of an unusual approach. I'll say this, when we're talking about offensive line, though, overall, and not to change the subject too much, no matter what happens for the rest of this year, next year, I would like to see the Dolphins continue to build the trenches. So whether James Daniels comes back or whether they get another rookie guard, I like the trend. Again, last year, Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul in the 1st and 2nd rounds. This year, Kenneth Grant and Jonas Naya. And then we also had Jordan Phillips, Zeke Biggers has started to play a lot. The 7th round started to play. The 7th round defensive tackle, Jordan Phillips, the 5th round defensive tackle, continue to build those trenches. Again, whether James Daniels, the veteran, comes back as a starter, or whether you draft somebody or get a free agent, whether you think about getting a quarterback in the 1st round, whatever, continue to build both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Before we move on, I should point out another little news item. Because the Dolphins had a bye, they had a practice on Monday, which is unusual. But because the game is still on Sunday, there's no injury report. That comes out, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We can tell you from our observations, the 2 players we did not see at practice on Monday were Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. I did spot Jalen. Jalen. No, I haven't seen Jalen Phillips. He wasn't there either. I'm not wrong. He wasn't there.
You're right. Yes.
Okay. So Bradley Chubb and Jalen Waddle. Sorry. Bradley Chubb saw him in the locker room after practice when we were in there for interviews, I should say. Omar said he was riding the bike. Remember, he's been on the injury report the last couple of weeks with a foot injury, but he's played, so I don't think it's anything serious. I did not see Jalen Waddle. Zero idea what's going on. Not going to speculate. We'll worry about that on Wednesday when the Dolphins are back at practice. Along with Austin Jackson returning, you mentioned this earlier, Darren Waller's on the verge of returning. Mike McDaniel indicating that he will have his window opened on Wednesday. And the question now becomes, how do you integrate Waller back into the offense after going jumbo-sized for the past 3 games, which started when Julian Hill was out, and even they kept it with Daniel Brunskill, got 22 snaps against the Washington Commanders the last game, even after Hill returned. So how do you keep that, which has been pretty successful, while certainly not dismissing the contributions that Waller could make?
Man, I tell you what, Poop, at one point today, I looked over at the tight end group, and I'm going to try to get the names right. I think they have 4 or 5 of them out there. Julian Hill, Hayden Rucci, Tanner Conner, Greg Dulcich. I'm forgetting somebody, aren't I? Am I forgetting somebody?
Yes,
Chris
Myrick.
Yes, Chris Myrick. That's right. And then you're going to have Darren Waller back presumably Wednesday. Wow, that's a lot of bodies. That's going from 0 to 60 in like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. So it'll be interesting to see how they solve that problem. Obviously, Waller is going to get his snaps because that's a proven commodity. Julian Hill is improving. Greg Dulcich has improved. You really aren't going to play more than 3 tight ends, even with special teams. So it's a good problem to have. That's a position that has really grown throughout this season and developed. So it's a good problem to have. But boy, you're going to have a lot of guys over there and at the tight end going through tight end drills, going from not long ago you were struggling to get 2 or 3 guys. That's why Dulcich was signed and Rucci was promoted from practice squad to active roster. Now you're going to have too many guys. Good problem to have, and they are being reasonably productive this season. Reasonably.
Yeah, I would suspect one of those will wind up being gone, probably Myrick from the practice squad. On the 53, will the Dolphins keep 4? They have done so in the past. Don't know. Remember, Dolphins have currently a roster opening. We haven't had an episode or show since Friday, so this is news. Breaking news. Jordan Colbert, safety / linebacker, special teams ace, most of them more than anything else, was placed on injured reserve. They did not replace him on the 53. If Austin Jackson gets activated for the game against New Orleans, logically he takes that spot. But when Darren Waller gets activated as well, then they'll have to make another move to create an opening for him. Could be a tight end. My guess, if it's a tight end, it would be Hayden Rucci, or it could be a player at a different position. The way, and remember, generally speaking, what the Dolphins have done this year, why I would not expect Waller to be activated immediately for New Orleans is, I could be wrong on this. The pattern has been that players come back and they go through at least a full week of practice, and then actually 2 weeks of practice before they get activated. And then Darrell Bevel was talking about, we have 21 days. And I'm like, okay. Wasn't talking like his words didn't necessarily portray the image of somebody who was like right on the verge of coming back.
Yeah, me and David Ferronis, my coworker at the Sun Sentinel, were kind of wondering why Waller's clock wasn't started today. Why didn't they open the window today? But I guess he's just not that close, right? And you don't want to, I guess you don't want to give away days. But if he's close enough to have the window open, what's one extra practice or what's 1 or 2 extra days going to do? Like, what's the detriment? So I'm not really sure why you wouldn't have opened the window. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
I believe I have your answer. Let me double check. I'm going to have to bring up a calendar here. So because remember, it's not a 3-week window. It's a 21-day window.
Yes.
So the day of the week. So 3 weeks from today is December 1. 8 is December 8th, 15th. If you recall, my good friend, they play against the Pittsburgh Steelers that night, which means they would have to make a decision before then before that game. Whereas if they wait until Wednesday, and today was a light practice anyway, if they wait until Wednesday, then his window ends December 17th, 2 days after the Pittsburgh game. I think it gives him the flexibility to make a decision before that game. I think that would be the logic behind it.
Yeah, I could see that. So, I mean, I would think you would want Waller for Pittsburgh more than New Orleans or the New York Jets, but maybe he's just not ready. Maybe it's going to be close. Maybe it's not a deal of we think he's going to be ready in the next 10 days is kind of what I'm getting at. So, yeah, so really, I mean, I would have to say they probably, and here I go extrapolating what probably shouldn't be extrapolated, they probably have a lot more. Right. I'll flow through stop signs. They probably have a lot more faith in Austin Jackson's imminent return than Darren Waller's, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And that work, nothing has been routine with Darren Waller. Nothing has been unscheduled. So that kind of, it raises a red flag, but at least we know the window is planning to be opened on Wednesday. So whatever it is, Wednesday and not Monday, it looks like he will be back this season. Looks like. Possibly.
Well, the fact that, again, maybe reading way too much into it, it almost suggests to me that it's not a lock that he's back this season. Otherwise, why wouldn't you do it today? But
right.
Who knows? That's above my pay grade. A lot of things are above my pay grade. Anything stand out to you in our discussions with either Craig Aukerman, special teams coordinator, defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, or offensive coordinator Frank Smith?
Not necessarily. I mean, there was more Chop Robinson talk, and what about his Chop's season and everything, and if I'm not mistaken, Weaver said the more snaps he gets, the better he gets. We'll see, because I think that was definitely the case last year. I'm not so sure that's been the case this year. I'm not so sure that his run, his edge setting, his ability to set the run against the edge, in fact, turn it back inside, has improved much, if at all. And that was a concern coming into the season. Chop has kind of been stuck in the mud this season. I haven't seen a whole lot of improvement. And so, we'll see what he can do the rest of the way. But without Jalen Phillips out there, definitely more is needed from Chop. We'll see if he can deliver. And if Chubb is slowed in any way with that foot injury, then you really, really need more from Chop. And Weaver did say with guys like Judon, who are up in age a little bit, you want to kind of watch their snap count right now so that they can be ready for that last 3 or 4 game stretch. I think he said at the end of the season, which we're kind of at, but 6 games left, you're still kind of in that middle end stretch. So Chop, I don't want to say the pressure is building, but eyes will be focused on him a little bit more heavily down the stretch here.
I would certainly agree. Especially after the first 2 games that Jalen Phillips had with the Eagles, even though he didn't do much yesterday. And there's some Dolphin fans who are like, where was Jalen Phillips yesterday with this? Guys, seriously? I will tell you one comment that I found very interesting for me was actually, it was my question I asked cornerbacks coach Matthew Araujo, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, what he's learned about Rasul Douglas from the time he joined the team. And I found his answer very interesting, that he said, despite the fact that the guy's been in the league for very long, he welcomes, in fact, invites coaching. And there's a lot of players with his resume who are more difficult to coach, particularly since Matthew, I'll call Matthew A, looks like he's 23 years old. Right. And there's a lot of veterans are not necessarily as eager to take in instruction and all that. And he could not have been more complimentary of the way that Douglas accepts coaching. and also talked about how dude walks into a room and lights up the place. So I found that very interesting.
Yeah, I did too. Rougeau is a good guy to talk to about this kind of stuff because he's a guy who seems like he's a very straight shooter. I don't think he's BS'd us a whole lot, whether it's talking about Rasul Douglas or Jack Jones. And I was asking him about just how do you keep the spirits high in that room this year? I mean, you see the late Jalen Ramsey trade, then Cater goes down, and Storm Duck goes down, and Chris, who is the guy from Cincinnati who didn't, Chris Hilton, Mike Hilton doesn't work out, and Kendall Sheffield gets released, and then he comes back, and then he gets injured, and just the up and down, and Ethan Bonner hasn't really seemed to grab hold of the position or the opportunity, and Jason Marshall Jr. is in, then he's out. It's been so up and down with those corners, and that I'll take my hat off to them, man. They've done an admirable job. You knew there were going to be a weakness coming in, but Jack Jones has made some crucial plays. Rasul Douglas has made some crucial plays. They've really stepped up. So congrats to Matthew Arujo, the cornerbacks coach, and the cornerbacks themselves, man. They've hung in there. They've stuck around. They've done a good job. None of them are going to the Pro Bowl. Let's not, don't get it twisted of what I'm saying here. But just the situation that they've been in, my hat is off to them. They've done an admirable job. They've all been pros.
No, without question, I do want to check something because I know the Dolphins' opponent passer rating against or opponent passer rating was really brutal for a good part of the season. Was like in the 110s, which is a really, really bad number. I believe that's gone down quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah, and I think Minka has done a pretty good job back there also after starting out very quietly. Again, he's not headed to the Pro Bowl either. I'm not saying that. But he's been a kind of a stabilizing force. After, to me, he was almost I don't want to say he wasn't there early in the season, but it was hard to find. He was low profile early in the season. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, it's 109.6. It's still not good, but again, the perception is weird because it looks to me like they played better against the pass. And I will close it with this. If you follow Dolphins articles all over the place, wherever you get them, whether it's sunsentinel.com, Perks Outlet, Miami Dolphins on SI.com, my outlet, any other ones, chances are today you're going to be everywhere you turn, you're going to see a Daniel Brunskill story. That was a very hot topic today. And good friend Hal Habib from the Palm Beach Post did some very quick research, and it came out AI decided he's the only player who's ever started at 6 different positions at one point or another during his NFL career, which is obviously the 5 position on the offensive line, the 6th being tight end. And this is where I haven't done the research yet, but something tells me maybe Jeff Dellenbach would have done that for the Dolphins, for those old enough to remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, because he was somebody who played everywhere on the offensive line. And if the Dolphins ever opened with an extra, like a jumbo package like that, kind of get the feeling he might have done it before. And maybe AI doesn't go that far back. I don't think a lot of the lineup stuff, the snap counts and all that, were not as well kept back then as they are now. So, which is why I felt they need to point that out for whatever reason.
Maybe I was just surprised Alec Ingold knew all that. Hal said he went to AI. Sorry. Wow. Sorry. That's terrible.
Very nice. On that note, I can't top this. On that note, we will not. Very, very well done. Very nice. He is TP, Chris Perkins. See what I did?
Thank you.
Okay, check out his fine work at sunsentinel.com when he's not performing at the Improv. Perk, do we have a Dolphins deep dive with Perk this week?
We do. Me and David Furones tomorrow at noon on Dolphins.com. Dolphins.com, on SunSentinel.com. That would be something if they put us on Dolphins.com, on SunSentinel.com, and you can catch us on YouTube. So yeah, we'll be there tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. From this end here, we have a Dolphins Collective tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m., where I'm sure TD and I are going to go into it about his desire to put Shedeur Sanders in the Hall of Fame and my desire to just simmer down a little bit, among other things. We'll talk Dolphins mostly, obviously. Probably be back here tomorrow. Check your notifications. It's a day off for the Dolphins, and don't want to necessarily repeat the same old things. Although it's never stopped me before, right? In the meantime, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Check out the written content, as mentioned before. Miami Dolphins on SI.com. On that note, thanks as always, Perk, and we will catch you later.